I can hear you fine.
Okay, and here we go. All right. Hey everyone, Spidey Librarian here, and welcome to The Webline, a podcast about Spider-Man and his amazing world. Here we discuss all aspects of our favorite web slinger in a fun, informal, but informative forum. I am your humble host, the Spidey Librarian, and with me today is my friend and author of the book String Theory for Dummies, Andrew Zimmerman Jones. Andrew, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's good to see you. Andrew and I, we go back over 20 years. We went to undergrad together. We were in the same fraternity. Uh, this man could probably tell you stories about me. Um, but it's good to see him. It's good to have him here, and I just want to thank you for being here for the second episode. In this week's episode, Andrew and I will be reacting to Spider-Man Across the Spiderverse, which just hit theaters over the weekend, and we're going to give it as thorough a review as we can without revealing any significant spoilers. It'll be a difficult dilemma as we both really enjoyed the movie immensely, but we've resolved to do a review that everyone can listen to before they go out and see it. With that in mind, though, I would like to announce a scheduled Across the Spider-Verse spoiler talk stream on in the evening on Friday, June 16th. That'll be about 2 weeks from now. This will give viewers a chance to see the movie so we can really kind of unleash our reactions to it. It may or may not be an official episode of the podcast, but it will be happening live on my YouTube channel on Friday, June 16th. But before we do a daring dive into our timely topic, it's time to dish on the latest spiderific developments with our knockout news segment, the Bugle News Flash. For our first news item, Tom Holland's future as Spider-Man has been the subject of some discussion this week. Now, this isn't exactly news because people are always asking him, hey, are you going to be in the next Spider-Man movie? Are you going to be in Spider-Man 4? And the reason that they keep asking is because we don't have an official word yet. Well, Tom actually, he doesn't shy away from those questions. He actually does answer them. And he gave kind of a sort of a little update this week. He basically said that he's happy to keep doing the Spider-Man Peter Parker role as long as they can continue to do justice to it and to continue to elevate the material in the films. Now, a lot of people will probably consider that something of a non-answer, but it's also kind of it's an answer where he hasn't said no. So, it's worth clinging to hope just for that reason alone. I would say, because I watched several different videos of him talking to reporters about that specific issue, is that he's definitely still in talks with Marvel Studios. There are discussions going on about the upcoming Spider-Man movie that isn't Across the Spider-Verse. And, all indications are that he is still on board, but there is nothing official. So, again, Tom Holland and his status as Spider-Man is newsworthy. Media outlets keep asking him about it, so I figured I'd report on that. I don't know, Andrew, have you seen any of those discussions lately?
No, I haven't seen those. I mean, I certainly hope he does more because I do just love him as Spider-Man.
I mean, I was really happy when they cast him in 2017 because he looked like a baby, basically, like, and Peter Parker is very young when he gets bitten in the comics. So I really was happy about that. And just to watch him take the role as far as he has so far, it's just like, dude, please, I want to see you doing this like at age 40 so that you can do like Craven's Last Hunt or something like that. So,
Mhm.
anyways, in other news, for the video games, I know that we saw the gameplay trailer last week for Marvel's Spider-Man 2, which I am really, really excited about. Andrew, have you seen any of that, or do you know about the
I
game?
I haven't seen the new one though.
Oh
I
God.
played whatever their last one was. We had it. I forget on which system.
Okay. Okay. Spider-Man 2 is going to be available on the place. It's going to be a PS5 exclusive. So I don't know if you have a PlayStation 5, but if you want to play it, then you're going to need that system. So, but anyways, we keep getting little details about the capabilities in this game, and the biggest one that I came away with this week is that apparently, you know how like in Marvel's Spider-Man and in Spider-Man Miles Morales, you could level them up. They had skill trees and everything. One of the innovations that I've seen this week is that Peter will have his own skill tree, Miles will have his own skill tree, and then there actually will be a shared skill tree between the two characters. And I think that's
Hmm.
going to be really cool because they are going to have similarities, but there are also going to be some key differences between them. And so I like that the game is going to reflect that. So looking forward to that game very much. They said fall 2023. I'm chomping at the bit for an actual release date, though. All right.
Um.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, have you looked at all at the Marvel role playing game that I think Matt Forbeck is putting out or putting together for distribution? It's in, I think, public playtest.
Is this the tabletop one?
Tabletop Marvel role playing game. Yeah.
I have looked a little bit into it. I do have one of the books that they were selling. I definitely got one. But I haven't I haven't played a tabletop RPG in longer than I'd care to admit. And so I've looked it over, but I haven't really like dived into it. Have you?
Yeah, I played right when it first came out, and I know they've actually done some serious rebalancing of how they kind of handle classes or whatever with it. But what's interesting is they the way the powers worked at the beginning was it was kind of a skill tree sort of setup.
Okay.
And there was like an entire spider power skill tree,
Oh,
but it had a lot
cool.
of branches. So like you could create a character who had spider powers, and you could kind of choose, do you want the like Miles versions of the spider powers versus some of the Peter versions of the spider powers and stuff like that were all built into the same skill tree, and you had like some flexibility there. And then there were other things like super strength and stuff was kind of its own skill tree. So like you would create a character who would have like super strength and spider powers, and maybe some other things, and that would be kind of how you handle your build. So
Oh,
it's
that sounds
interesting.
awesome. Like, it makes me wonder if anyone at Insomniac was talking to the developers for this game because that's a really cool like way to do it. And I mean like um that makes a lot of sense too, especially after seeing across the Spider-Verse and just how many different types of spider people there are, and they're obviously going to have way different power sets and stuff. So that's really cool. And I don't know. I've really gotta look at that. I don't know. I've got to find a group to tabletop RPG with, and I haven't put the effort into it lately. I've just been working on my channel, doing my day job, so it's easy to get to for those kinds of things to fall by the wayside. So Across the Spider-Verse is looking at a $120 million opening weekend, according to Variety. And they had a $51.7 million opening day on Friday. Now, that includes probably about $17 million from Thursday night, which I went to go see it on Thursday night, and I believe you did too, right, Andrew?
Yep.
And I think it had like I saw one headline and I wasn't able to kind of dive into it, but I think it had the third highest box office for an opening day of any animated film, and I think it's got the single highest uh, opening day for any film this year, including Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which I have seen and which I thought was so good. So, all right. Well, and that is all the Spidey news for this week. Tune in next week to hear more. All right. And with that, we are going to move into our reaction and review of Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. So again, this review is going to be without major spoilers, but a few things you may want to keep in mind before we really get started. Now, the first point is going to be that spoilers in this context means that anything not featured in the marketing, trailers, TV spots, or mentioned by the cast or crew of the film. If it only appears in the film, then it's a spoiler, and we're going to do our best to avoid that. Second point, Andrew and I both agreed this would not be easy, as there's a lot to this movie that might be difficult to discuss without spoilers, but we're going to give it our best shot, and so we're going to try not to veer into any major spoilers. But point number 3 is that we are also human, and we may inadvertently spoil elements of the movie without realizing it in real time. So just please keep that in mind, and if we goof, be gentle. Don't scream at us in the chat too much. So,
we're working without a net, or maybe without a web here,
as it were. Yes, as it were. So, fourth and final point is that I do reserve the right to edit out any spoilers for the audio version of this podcast. But if we goof on live stream, it stays there to document our human folly and everlasting shame. So I just want to get those things out of the way before we get going. So Andrew, how did you prepare for this podcast knowing that we would be avoiding spoilers?
Well, so I actually talked with my kids a little bit about it, about like, what were your favorite things about it, and then kind of tried to figure out which things might be safe to talk about. Because I know a lot were in the trailers and things. And I was hoping I would have time to actually go back and watch Into the Spider-Verse again, because obviously anything in that I assume would be fair game.
Right.
But I didn't have time to do that. So we may probably reference some of that when discussing setup stuff and everything. But
yeah.
Because there's definitely some backstory that I did not remember was necessarily established in the first one. And I don't know if it's stuff they only introduced, in the second one, or if it was actually established in the first one. So like there were a couple of things like that I'm currently talking around because I don't know for sure. So.
Okay, that makes a certain amount of sense. And if I have the ability to make a clarification, I will. If you can mention something obliquely without, then we'll see what we can do. I'm happy to help wherever I can. So, so in terms of plot, and I do have a summary here. I'm going to try to keep it as vague but as specific as possible. So, it's a fairly reality spanning one. Miles Morales, having had time to grow into his role as Spider-Man, struggles with balancing his school duties and keeping secrets from his parents while he tries to balance all of that with his superhero life. Upon receiving a surprise visit from Gwen Stacy, he is pulled into a multiversal adventure where he meets hundreds of alternate reality spider people, including Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, their leader who maintains the web of life and destiny that connects all of them. As Miles and Miguel butt heads over what it means to be Spider-Man, Miles may have to pit his very existence against the sanctity of the web of life. And hopefully that didn't give away too much. But what did you think of this plot setup? And what would you have, just in terms of what I've said, what would you have added, taken out, or said differently than I just did? And also, how did the execution of the plot work for you?
I thought it was good. The thing I'd change about the synopsis is I actually felt that Gwen and Miles were pretty equal co-protagonists of this.
She definitely gets a lot more emphasis in this one, and I would agree it's comparable to Miles's development.
Yeah. Like if you think kind of like a hero's journey sort of thing, like they both are clearly like on that trajectory.
Yes.
Like they both in this have like a call to adventure. They both have to make decisions. They both have to butt heads. All of the stuff that Spider-Man has to do as is happening in different ways to both of them at different points. And so.
Yeah, and again, like I just had a thought, something I wanted to bring up, and I'm like, nope, I think that counts as a spoiler, so I'm not gonna bring it up. I don't know how much self-censoring I'm gonna do during this particular episode, but it definitely feels like, I'm gonna have to think twice about everything I'm saying. But you're correct, and I think I think it is worth mentioning that a significant portion of the plot actually does take place in Gwen's world, and that is, I mean, that's something that I've seen discussed on other medias as well. But I think that it's worth mentioning simply because the emphasis on the amount of development that she gets, and I would say rightfully so. She is like I'm happy to say that when the Spider-Verse comic event happened, she was introduced just prior to that event, and I'm very, very proud to say that I have that comic, and I'm very, I'm excited that she's gotten as much development as she has. But she's basically as old as the kind of quote unquote Spider-Verse itself. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that she, as someone who is also right around Miles's age, maybe a little bit more experienced in the spider person role than he is, but she's still there's still a lot of the same kind of emotional and character developmental beats that they are hitting at similar but slightly different times in the movie.
Yeah. One thing I'm interested. So my general knowledge, my general knowledge of it's Ghost Spider is what she has a few different names, I think. Oh, we'll call her Spider Gwen. But yeah, that version of Gwen, I was instantly fascinated with when I first saw her. I have mostly been exposed to her through the various animated shows.
Mm-hmm.
And then I actually have her minifig in the Marvel role-playing game. Miniatures game. The name of which, the subtitle of which I can't remember. Crisis Protocol, the Marvel Crisis Protocol. I do have her fig just because I think it came with the Miles one, and so when I bought the pack, but also like I was looking forward to getting that one because I like the color scheme, I like the aesthetic. Like I always thought she was really cool. But actually, here's the question I have for you.
Sure.
Because you're much more familiar with the comics than I am. Have they ever, with all the Spider-Verse stuff, and I kind of, I was also curious about this in the comics, I asked you a little bit, is she the only Gwen Stacy that has ever gotten the spider powers? Like, are there any alternates of her in the comic books that they've established, or is she like kind of a weird one-off in the comics?
My understanding so far,
it's usually a Peter in most universes.
My understanding so far is that like she has pretty much been the only version. Now I could be wrong about that, and I haven't read the comics as much recently as I used to, of course. but she's certainly the one that gets the most focus. I think, it's possible that Marvel could have done like some kind of like, some kind of story where they feature a variant of her, but I'm not familiar with any of them at this time. And I think that it is kind of like, I think for the most part, like the media seems to mostly focus on her. And so as far as I know, she is the only real like version of herself that has gotten spider powers. So, and I think it's more or less the same with Miles. Now, Miles is a little bit weird because he started out in the Ultimate Universe when that universe's Peter Parker died, and then when Marvel decided to basically kill off the Ultimate Universe, they kind of merged Miles into the mainstream comic book universe, and he
that was the Secret Wars storyline, right?
Yes, it
Like
was.
Doom became God, and yeah, okay.
Right. And and so he kind of exists in the world with Peter Parker, and they kind of know each other, and occasionally they're like protege and mentor, and sometimes they pretend they don't know each other. I don't think Marvel has ever truly made up their mind as to what kind of relationship they want those two to have outside of the Spider-Man comics and graphic novels, which if you haven't read those, I highly recommend them. They're really good. But for the most part, Miles is the only Miles. There is a notable exception though, because there is apparently an Earth 616 Prime Miles who, at least in Peter's world, before this Miles came along, worked with and for the Kingpin. And those two Miles have met, but that Miles never got spider powers.
So when they merged the Ultimate and the Prime, I don't know how that merging happened. I actually read some of Secret Wars, but I didn't read the like conclusion stuff. So there are two Miles over here. It's not like this Miles and that Miles like merged. It's there
yeah.
are two of them. Is that happened to many people, or is Miles kind of a weird exception?
Miles, I think, was the lone exception with like one other possible character from the Ultimate Universe. I think it was like Ultimate Mr. Fantastic, who had become something of a monster by that point.
Right.
But basically, I think he was like the one character that the editors over at the Ultimate imprint were like, no, 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 you have to save him. I think there was enough people who were interested in the character that they were like, yeah, okay, yeah, we're gonna bring him over. But at the end of the first Spider-Man story, Peter, after meeting Miles for the first time, he comes back to his reality, and he actually does do like a Google search on Miles Morales and finds a Miles Morales, but they actually cut it off right when he says, oh, and that's like where the story ends. So you never find out who that Miles Morales is until later, after he's been brought over into the Prime universe.
So let's diverge here for a second. Since we can't talk about spoilers about Across the Spider-Verse, let's pull on this web a little bit. So do you think Miles will ever show up in the assuming Tom Holland continues as Peter Parker, would you expect to see not completely disconnected from the animated ones, would you expect they have a live action Miles in a future Spider-Man movie or the next Spider-Man?
So I'm hoping so.
I don't know if you know the hint from, I think it's from the Homecoming.
Oh yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I kind of like there's a thing I want to say, but I'm pretty sure that definitely counts as a spoiler.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
Let's just say that we definitely got a we got a wink and a nudge towards the possible existence of a of a Miles Morales and possibly his existence as Spider-Man in the future. Not once, but twice actually, and spoilers for Homecoming and spoilers for No Way Home. I don't know if that one's a spoiler, but it was definitely a nod. But I mean, we meet Aaron Davis, the Prowler. Well, not the Prowler in Homecoming. We just meet him as Aaron Davis a small time criminal, basically. And he mentions having the existence of a nephew, and so that definitely sets up the possibility that, ooh, that's Aaron Davis. He has a nephew. It just makes sense to assume that that's Miles. Not a guarantee, of course, because it's not a guarantee until Kevin Feige or whoever, until they make the movies. But in No Way Home, they basically, like, when Andrew Garfield is making sure that Electro is okay. And Electro says that, hey, I just assume you'd be black. And his Peter apologizes, and he's like, I mean, there's got to be a black Spider-Man out there somewhere. And I mean, I was in the theaters the first earliest opportunity I could to see the movie, and just based on the audience reaction alone, like, people knew what he was referencing. So I hope so. I really want there to be one. And honestly, I think, not that I want Tom Holland to retire at all, but I think if we get to that point where Tom Holland decides to step back from the role, Miles would be like the perfect legacy character to kind of step in as he's stepping off. So anything is possible. I hope so. I don't know for certain, but I hope so. What about you?
Well, and it was especially, like you mentioned, like how long Tom Holland could do it. Definitely when he's older and could take kind of the mentor role as Peter, because I know in the comics there's one, I don't know actually which comic it's from, but I saw it, and you may have been the person on Facebook who shared it. There's something where, like, I think Peter, it's like a big battle, like an Avengers battle. And basically, like, Captain America's been taken out, and like Peter is essentially realizes, like, he is the most experienced, like, he's the expert, like, leader of the group at this point, because, like, he's been doing this since he was like 15, or maybe younger. And now he's like, what, in his 30s. So he's been doing this for like 20 years, and he's surrounded by, like, everyone is like significantly less experienced than him. And he's just like, oh, I know how to take out the world ending thing, and no one else here does. And kind of steps into a leadership role. And the MCU, obviously Peter's role in that is kind of different, with everyone not knowing who he is. But yeah, it would definitely be interesting if over several movies to kind of see him moving into that role where, like, he's got to be the guy who kind of, takes on almost the role that Tony had with him, even where they're like butting heads with a younger Spider-Man who thinks he can do everything and, gets himself in over his head, water over his head and everything. Would be very interesting.
I mean, and unfortunately, Peter's development as a leader in the comics is so uneven. There are some times when he is like, okay, I'm the experienced hero. There's younger or less experienced heroes that I can help. Or he knows when, as part of a team, to, like, play his part and make the sacrifice play so that others can advance. And then sometimes you just get in the comics where whoever's writing him is a fan of the young, bumbling, man-child Peter. And so, like, I mean, the good thing about the comics is we get all of these arcs. The bad thing about it is we get a lot of unevenness in the character's development over the years because of comics' elastic timeline. And I think, to kind of bring it back to the movies, like, the nice thing about the movies is while you may not get, the most expansive development on the character, you usually, a good writer is going to distill it down and figure out what makes this character work, what makes them work best with what the material that they've got, and then how can they make that translate in the best possible way to this medium. And that's why I really kind of feel like the version of Miles that we have gotten so far in the movies, I would say that so far he's the best version because the writers have done a magnificent job of just kind of figuring out what makes Miles tick, what makes Miles Miles, how is he different from Peter, and how can we tell a really good story with all of this. And they've done a fantastic job so far. Would you agree?
Yeah. In the first one, I did not have a ton of experience with Miles, and I just fell in love with him with how they portrayed him in the Across the Spider-Verse,
Yeah.
um,
No,
or
he's
the Into the Spider-Verse movie. I liked him in Across the Spider-Verse too. But yeah, when we first saw it, I just was like, okay, I'm really liking what they're doing with this character.
yeah, no, it's wonderful. Let's move on to characters and performances. I've basically got a list of the voice actors and the characters they play. The cast of this movie was nothing short of fantastic, and they did a splendid job of bringing memorable performances to their characters. Let's go through the voice cast and talk a little bit about them. And if you need help identifying any of these actors, I can probably ring a bell if you don't know who I'm talking about first. So let's just go ahead and talk first about Shamik Moore as Miles Morales.
Mhm.
Andrew, what did you think? How do you think he did with that character?
So I don't know what else he's done. I thought he was great as Miles. I assume that's the same voice actor who did him in the original
Yes,
Into the
yes, it is.
Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, I mean, he just does a great job with him. I mean, it's just like I said, there's just so much emotion, whenever you need it. With Spider-Man is always hard because you by and large have to be playful. The first scene we see with Miles, no spoiler, um,
Well,
but
that actually is not a spoiler. That has been put out. Like that scene was actually put out online. I know which one you're talking
oh,
about.
the ATM
Yes,
reference.
yes, with the
Okay.
spot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah. So I'll spoil this. There's a person stealing an ATM, and just is kind of there. Miles is in there, as he's stealing it, and it basically is like, why do we say ATM machine? Because the M stands for, and it's like it's a very good point. Now I'm gonna like be catching myself every time I do it. But he's also just kind of watching this guy try and steal the ATM and reacting to it. So you get,
There is. This is a spoiler, so I'm not going to say it, but there's definitely a callback to that moment later in the film that made me laugh really hard.
mhm.
So
Yeah, and but with so he gets like the fun quippiness, and all that stuff. His interactions with his parents are just phenomenal. I remember the point where I fell in love with the Into the Spider-Verse movie was the part where his dad like came over the police loudspeaker at his when he's dropping him off to school to tell him that like he loves them,
you
and like
gotta
the
say it
reaction to
back.
everything. I mean, it was just such an emotional connection to like an animated character, in just such a short period of time. um was really well done, and I mean you kept getting that through this,
and and
I think.
and that actor is Brian Tyree Henry. Um, he let me see. I think he was in the Eternals. He was Fastos. He was the Hephaestus
Oh,
type. Okay.
okay.
And no, he's an amazing actor. I think he's also from the show This Is Us, which I haven't seen, but I've heard really good things about. And he does a wonderful job as Miles's father, just trying to. He expresses the annoyance of parenthood and loving your kid, but like being like, dude, the mystery never ends, and that kind of frustration, which I'm sure as a parent you can identify with, you know.
Oh yeah, as a parent of a kid who's graduating and going on to college, like there's a lot of stuff about them like dealing with Miles as like what's going on with his school and is he on track, and all of that stuff that I was like I've had these conversations with my wife, and
Yeah.
yeah, so it was
Um,
really good.
I like that Shamik Moore, like he definitely did the whole like he does the quippiness fine, which apparently is a thing. Like as Spider-Man, you have to be quippy. The fans will revolt if you're not quippy enough. And I felt like he brought a good level of that. And he also does a really good job of the whole like, like he definitely has goals and he's not he's not listless or anything like that. And he's trying really hard to make everything work and he's keeping secrets. And I feel like Shamik Moore does a good job of kind of bringing that kind of pain because he clearly loves his folks. and he doesn't want to lie to them, but he kind of feels it's necessary. And on top of that, he has to keep up on his studies and all of that. Like, he does a really good job of playing the kind of harried person that Spider-Man should be, and I think he definitely deserves kudos for that. How about Haley Steinfeld as Spider-Gwen?
Yeah. I looked up who did the voices, and that one I recognized immediately, of course,
Oh,
because she's Hawkeye, and
yeah.
I loved her in that. Like,
Oh,
I
she
loved
was so
that.
good. She was so good.
And that, like, sarcasm, like her tone. Once I realized it was the same person, it totally made sense. Yeah, and I just love what they're doing with Gwen in this. And I think she did Gwen in the various. She's done most of the, like, audio for Gwen, I think, in other versions of the animated
Oh,
movies and
okay.
shows.
I didn't know that. Oh, that's really
think
cool.
I looked through. It looked like she'd done some of them.
Okay.
Because I know in those there's, like, Spider Gwen teams up with, like Squirrel Girl and,
Right.
like, Iron. There's a whole bunch of those. That are, I've seen some on Disney Plus, and like I said, that's kind of where I got most of them. Some shorts, Miss Marvel, things like that. Um, and I think she did some Spider Gwen or Gwen Stacy audio in that too. So she clearly, this is something she's done a lot in. Um,
Yeah.
and
This
I
is
mean,
this is her role in a lot of ways.
yeah, I mean, because and the reason I'm saying that is because I seem to recall that I found that out when Hawkeye came out. I was like, what else has she been in? And then, like, one of the things I saw was that she did a lot of the voice acting in the Marvel animated ones, for Gwen. So, but that's been a while since I got that in there. So I may have gotten. I'm not. That's not recently fact checked. So if I'm wrong about that, then we'll catch that later, I'm sure.
It's
So,
fine. My
but
my favorite line of hers from Into the Spider-Verse, the previous movie, favorite single line, "You don't get to like my hair." That was such a great line because her hair was all messed up from Miles, like, inadvertently, you know, catching it. So,
yeah.
but yeah, no, she had a really good arc in this film as well, and a lot of that arc centers around stuff that has gone on in her, like, home dimension. And I don't want to say too much more than that, but there again, a lot of development, and she rises to the occasion very well. And we talked a little bit earlier about how, like, she's hitting a lot of the same emotional beats that Miles is, maybe in slightly different ways or at slightly different times. But I mean, there's a parental issue going on there as well, one that she has to resolve, and very clearly struggles to do. And I think Haley Steinfeld brings that performance very compellingly to her character.
and and I believe there's a thing about her backstory that is revealed in Into the Spider-Verse about like her kind of, I mean, with Spider-Man, there's always the Uncle Ben or some, that instigating loss
Right.
that sets the, Spider-Man quintessential hero's journey, kind of archetype. And for Gwen, it's not obviously the death of Uncle Ben. It's a different death, which I believe is revealed that this death happened in Into the Spider-Verse, right? So we're safe.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So her Peter died.
Yes.
Um, and that is said, in Into the Spider-Verse. So that's out of our realm of spoilers. And that is dealt, and it's dealt with very early on.
Do
So
you
so
do you know who voiced that Peter Parker?
I do not. No.
Jack Quaid? Do you know who that
Oh,
is?
oh, from The Boys, right?
Yes, from The Boys
Yeah.
and from Star Trek Lower Decks, which I'm now watching. So,
I didn't realize that's who did the Lower Decks.
yeah,
Okay.
he was voicing that dimension's Peter Parker.
Okay. I
And
did not know.
yeah, I didn't find it out until after the fact, and then when I did, I was just like, you know. So, but no, I felt I'd throw out a nod to him as well because I'm really liking a lot of the work that I've seen from him.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
Jake
avoid that.
Johnson returns as Peter B. Parker, and I'm just gonna say I was I knew for a while that it wasn't certain that he would be returning, so I was really glad to hear when they announced that he would be returning. And and I mean, we see this in the trailers. He got a little spider baby with him, and like
Mhm.
it was just, I don't know, it was just great to see him back and a little bit more of that development with him and Miles, that relationship that they had. Clearly, that was the inspiration for him to go back to Mary Jane and to have a kid, and so it was really nice to see that character come back. I kind of feel he didn't get anywhere near as much time in this movie as he did in the previous one, but I'm kind of okay with that because again, I would say Gwen and Miguel probably take up a lot more of that time that would have gone to him, and I'm all right with that. What did you think of his return?
Yeah, I mean, like, well, kind of like we said, there's no shortage of Peter Parker source material. So I'm fine that we don't need to know more about Peter's life.
Yeah.
I actually wasn't sure if I wasn't going to mention either him or the Spider Baby because I wasn't sure if that fell outside the realm or not of what we were allowed to talk
Oh no,
about.
he
Uh,
definitely they showed up in trailers.
okay, I did not remember
Yeah.
the Spider Baby from the trailers,
Oh
so
yeah,
that was a
she
little
did.
bit
She
surprise
did.
to me. But but uh but yeah, he's good. Again, he's there in the mentor role. Like it's not his story. He's there to support the people whose story it is, and they do a good job with that. Um, and yeah, and I mean the actor, he's really good with it and
Yeah.
everything.
He he
Um,
he's I was just really like, not all of the characters from Into the Spider-Verse made it back to this one. But with that said, it was just nice because he was definitely one of the main three of the previous movie, so it was nice to see him back. What did you think? And I'm gonna kind of tie two characters and actors into this one, because I kind of feel like they share the same role in this movie. But we had Oscar Isaac as Miguel O'Hara, the Spider-Man 2099, who is the leader of the Spider Society that Miles discovers when when Gwen's visit leads him to the multiverse. And then also Jason Schwartzman as the Spot, because they both kind of fill an antagonist role. And it's actually very hard for me to tell which one is the antagonist and which one is just an obstacle, because they both represent different aspects of antagonism to Miles. Um, what did you think of these actors in these roles?
well, I so first I'll say I think the thing that's always good with Spider-Man in the movies is I feel like Spider-Man, well, this may be a more general true statement. Spider-Man has some of the best villains in the movies in particular. Um,
When they decided to use the Spot, I jumped up the first. I was like, that's actually a brilliant move. So
yeah, but I mean, if you go back, and this is me getting into a grander like Marvel movie thing. Homecoming, Michael Keaton was hands down the best villain in any Marvel movie ever, in my opinion.
okay,
Um, and my reason for that is because you start the movie from his perspective. You sympathize with him before you see anyone else.
yes,
Like before you see Peter Parker, you're like, "Oh, this guy is getting screwed over by Tony Stark. He's getting screwed over by the system. He has a contract and they're just ripping it out from him." So you have the sympathy for him. So then later on when you find he's going like over the edge and he's extreme, you're already on his side a little bit.
right. You're like, I get
The
it.
other Marvel movies have dropped the ball on this a number of times. Why in Civil War you don't start with seeing Zemo's family killed, and then and then you're connected to Zemo. Instead, you find out. Spoiler alert for Civil War, I guess. Sorry about that. Um, uh, Instead, it's like halfway through the movie before you find out like what caused him to like begin like blowing people up, and it's just like he could have been such a sympathetic character if you had just flipped that. Same thing with Thanos. Now granted, Thanos was built over many
Right.
things. So
Yes, he was.
he was a big bad already, but still, it was like they get even when they give people this kind of sympathetic backstory, like Homecoming was one of the only ones where they actually let you emotionally connect to the villain first.
Hmm.
And even like that scene where Michael Keaton is with Peter in like before going to prom or Homecoming, and he basically is like listen, we just don't, he's like giving him an out. Like and
That
I
was
mean,
and that was a brilliant scene too.
it was a brilliant scene. Like he's like, listen, I'm not a bad guy. I don't got any beef with you, And so, but in general, and this was huge in No Way Home. The idea that Spider-Man ultimately, like he's many of his villains have some sympathetic backstory.
Yes.
There's a lot of variation depending on which version of Osborn you're talking about or something like that, obviously. But a lot of them are not evil people. And anytime you can have in my opinion, anytime you can have a villain where you can like really connect with like what's driving them, and you even sort of see that, like especially if you can see like they have a point, um that's great.
Yeah.
And there was some of that with these characters, and the way the stories are set up, and everything's revealed. um they both in different ways have a lot of sympathy going for them, and I think the actors did a good job um in very different ways of portraying that.
Yeah, I would
you know
agree.
I mean my hope would be that like he somehow can like that the overall storyline somehow like redeems the conflicts
Hmm.
in some way, but I don't know how realistic that is always. But I just finished Ted Lasso, so I have hope that people can change.
On
um
on a side note, I just started watching clips of Ted Lasso on YouTube, and I'm like, okay, I have to watch this show now because it's
oh
just
it's
is it good?
Yeah, there's a fairly infuriating plot line through season 2, but just work through it. Like the ending was
Okay.
very very nicely done, but yeah, it's worth watching the whole thing.
Okay. Okay. It's fun to see. I love watching actors portray like multiple Marvel characters, and we definitely had that with Haley Steinfeld, and Oscar Isaac is also, he's Moon Knight, you know. Um, and I don't know. I really enjoy seeing them do another take on another character, and it helps when it's a different medium like animation. So,
Mhm.
but but yeah, it's a lot of fun. And then Jason Schwartzman, you know, the only thing I can remember him from, did you watch Scott Pilgrim versus the World?
Mhm.
He's G-Man. He's the final ex-boyfriend. And so it was just fun hearing his voice because I could hear that character whenever he was like getting more and more manic against Miles. I was like, "Oh yeah, okay, I hear the broken up with boyfriend in that portrayal right there." Um I'm going to go through a few more of these like kind of together. But Issa Rae as Jessica Drew Spider Woman was actually really distinctive and memorable in this one. I mean, you've got a black Jessica Drew who is pregnant and who is primarily riding a motorcycle throughout most of this one, which I thought was really cool. But I also think that her character arc was basically that of kind of like the reluctantly loyal mentor who maybe he doesn't want to be and is kind of in between a rock and a hard place. And I wish we had gotten to see more of her as well. There are so many good characters in this film that I'm just like, I would have loved to have seen more of that. But she was a lot of fun to watch and listen to. Um, I wish we'd have more of Luna Lauren Velez as Miles's mother Rio. I mean, she got some really good scenes with him, but like that relationship is just so core to the movies, and I feel like we got more emphasis on Miles and his dad on the previous movie. And so we're getting a
Mhm.
little bit more with his mother here, and I really like that and would have liked to have seen more. What did you think of these two actors?
Again, they were both really good. I thought it was interesting that it. I don't remember. I'm trying to figure out how to say it and be sure I'm not spoiling it. But with Jessica, Drew's character, I'm not sure how much we see of her using her powers, because that was one thing I was trying to figure out. Like did she just have like because she's got, is it a spoiler? She has a motorcycle. I think you mentioned that.
Yes, yeah,
Um,
she does.
but I don't know. Is she just like a normal spider person? Does she have like the whole like Spider Woman like psychic web thing going? Like what's going on with her? Um, because technically she, my knowledge of Spider Woman is that she would not be an alternate version of Spider Man. Like she's
Right,
got like her own entire thing going on.
right.
Um, and so I just don't know how she like ties into everything. And that sort of came in the first one. Like in the first one there was the girl, and I don't remember her name, in the like mech armor.
Oh, Penny
And she was,
Parker.
huh,
Penny Parker.
was it Penny Parker? Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. And so like I don't remember if her backstory had her having powers, or was she just kind of like created a spider suit. um so there's some of them where I'm kind of like, oh, they have like very divergent
Yeah,
storylines,
it's
and we
like she had a psychic link to the spider that the spider basically ran the mech suit.
oh, is that how it worked?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
um
very weird and convoluted, but it's fun.
so like a lot of them have like kind of very tangential different powers,
Oh
excuse me,
yeah.
power sets.
Yeah, as a matter of fact,
So anyway, so that was interesting, and like I'd say, I would be interested to find out. I guess maybe I'm diverging into saying we don't get much of Jessica's backstory in this movie.
no, we really
um
don't.
and I definitely would love to see some of that explored. I guess not a spoiler to say there will be another movie, because the original promo for this did say, Across the Spider-Verse Part 1. So like I
Yeah.
went into it knowing there would be another movie.
Yeah.
Um
And
and
it's also not a spoiler to say there is definitely a cliffhanger. Like it
Yeah,
definitely ends on a cliffhanger. It sets up another movie.
it
And I
it is a
think
cliffhanger, and you will be very upset that they didn't like plan this like it's being released next month. Like
yes. Yes. I was like, why do I have to wait until March? Because that's when the next one is currently scheduled for release, is like March next year. So
yeah. Um like it's the sort of cliffhanger that's like, well, now I know what people felt like when Empire Strikes Back came out. Like, I mean, it was
yeah.
like, um, uh, so
Um, let's see. The rest of the cast that I want to talk about were spider people who have fairly like short parts, but they were memorable. First of all, I just want to give a tip of my hat to Karan Soni as Pavitra Prabhakar, the Spider-Man India. First of all, Spider-Man India might be one of my new favorite Spider-Man. Like I've read the comic, the Spider-Man India comic that character is based on. And if you take a look at the design for that Spider-Man India, it's very basic, okay? The Spider-Man India in this one looks completely different, and I'm just like, dude, this is cool. This is a cool character. And the actor who voices him, Karan Soni, the only thing I know him from, he was apparently the cab driver in the Deadpool movies.
mhm.
Do you remember that guy?
Yeah, I do remember that guy, and I've seen him in other stuff. But yeah, no,
Yeah,
I looked him up too. I was like, who was that? And yeah,
yeah. Daniel Kaluuya is the voice of Hobie Brown, aka Spider Punk, and again, we've seen him briefly in the trailer, so we know he exists. But oh my god, great character, and he does a really good job bringing the Cockney anarchist tone to his
mhm.
character. I love the way that he looked. He looked like faded like concert posters kind of thing, and that was just a great look for him. Andy Samberg was Scarlet Spider. Did you know that?
I did not realize that.
That
No.
is Andy Samberg basically doing his Brooklyn Nine-Nine role, it seems. And then Spider Bite. I don't know if you'll remember her. But
I
she
remember her. I did not know her from. I assume she's from somewhere in the comics, but I was not familiar with that character at all.
I don't know if she's from the comics. She might be made just for the movie, but her voice actress was Amandla Stenberg. Do you know who she is?
Not from the name. No.
Okay, did you see the Hunger Games? The first one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's Rue.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, she was
Okay.
Rue. And so it was just like really cool to find all that out. But again, these parts, there's not a lot of development to them. Some of them are very surface, but a couple of them have kind of pivotal moments in the narrative. And I think all of these actors, all of these, I mean, Andy Samberg is a comedian, obviously, but like they did really good with the material that they had and really added a lot of flavor to it's ostensibly an ensemble movie, but really, I mean, it's Miles and Gwen's movie, and arguably like maybe his parents and Miguel and the Spots. Like those are probably the big roles right there. But like they did a wonderful job with what they had, and I was just kind of blown away by just the entire cast of this movie.
Yeah.
Any
Yeah.
thoughts on them or?
Yeah, no, it was really good across the board. I feel like I'm just kind of saying the same thing over again, but yeah, it
It's
was
okay.
just great voice acting,
It really
and
was.
they do bring really, and honestly, I would say for the superhero animated genre as a whole, to speak in broad general, like does
Sure.
some phenomenal voice acting. Like
Oh
like there is
yeah.
just a like wealth of talent of voice actors to draw from, for those roles, and to just really create like larger than life, these literally like gods among men in some cases, sort of characters. They just have some phenomenal people to pull from. Hopefully they'll be able to work like a Nathan Fillion or somebody into the next one somehow, or something. But yeah, there are there are just so many good voice actors out
And we had mentioned earlier that I said, kind of gave a shout out to Jack Quaid as the Peter Parker from Gwen's universe. Did you? I heard it when she was speaking, and I wasn't sure until afterwards. Do you know who his school counselor was? Were you able to pick up on who that was?
the actress.
Yeah,
I'm for spacing on her name, but she's from SNL. Yeah, I actually did recognize, like when
yeah,
she was talking, I recognized her.
yeah.
I saw
Rachel
her face.
Dratch.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I could tell who it was just from her voice. It was
Yeah,
it was
it was it was pretty like I was like, is that and I can never remember her first name, but I'm like, Dratch, is that? And yeah, it totally was. It was great.
okay.
Um, let's see. Moving on from the cast performances, let's take some time to comment on this movie's visual style and the quality of the animation. I, for one, was floored by the sheer amount of artistry, love, and innovation that seemed to go into every single frame of this story. The change of color palettes alone between realities was impressive, but you also had changes in animation styles, mood, and tonal shifting, and even shout outs to various forms of media represented in the characters as well as the settings. It
Mhm.
all makes for a dazzling presentation in a movie that also manages to equally elevate its story, characters, and themes. Andrew, how did this movie's visual style and animation choices work for you?
A lot of it mirrored the cool visuals from the first one, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
They had a great artistic approaches to that. The other thing, that they've kind of established, and granted, this was not the same, line of movies, but in the Doctor Strange movie, they established different universes look different. Um,
They do.
Both like you said, the color palette, physically what the universe is made of, all these different things. Uh, and so they established that, and so this is just kind of continuing that, like, some universes have you are in like more of a pastel sort of look, um and then they also did some stylistic things in certain universes more so than in others, where the color scheme of the background would kind of modify based on like the emotional mood of the scene. Like if it was tense, it
Hmm.
would be one color, and then like there would be a hug, and literally you would see the color like spread out like watercolors, across the room and things like that.
Yeah, and I
Um,
mean,
and again,
like, and it was well placed when they did those kinds of
Mhm.
things too. Like you noticed it for that reason, and it worked.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah,
And those are things you could do in an animated movie very easily that you can't do as easily in another movie. I mean, like Doctor Strange, whenever he got to that like destroyed universe at the end, everything's like gray, and I mean the color palette's definitely like modified to kind of reflect the mood of that universe. But like it's not like he just like turned around and hugged what's her name, Catherine, and suddenly color exploded out. That wouldn't
right, right.
work as well in a live action one. Um, but yeah, I mean, for this medium, definitely. I'm in a game design course, and I just watched a video actually on like creating games in different mediums, and someone was talking about that Marshall McLuhan quote about the medium is the message, and he said that's not exactly true, but the medium has to support the message,
Oh yeah,
and I think that's the thing is like they really made the most of this medium with the different art styles, and it was really interesting because and you had this in the first one with the like noir detective guy um version of Spider-Man. I don't remember what his name was in
uh,
Into the
it was just
um
Spider-Man Noir.
just Spider-Man Noir. Okay.
Hmm.
um
Yeah,
but having different styles like in the same scene with each other, like you said, the punk rock guy in the same scene as the way they were illustrating Miles and Gwen, which was relatively consistent. They kind of did some cool again, this isn't a spoiler, but Scarlet Spider looks literally like I mean they just took him out of the comic book,
oh
like as
yeah,
far as like defined and stuff. There's a couple of interesting ones they do. Like the first battle sequence was actually really great in terms of artistry of what they were doing with that villain and things like that. So I thought it was great. At times it was incredibly busy. Um,
yes.
so like there are times I'm going to need to rewatch it
Oh my
to
God,
follow what all is happening. But that was true of the first one,
yeah.
honestly, and to some degree. It's even more true of this one because there are just more like giant fight sequences and chase sequences and just things where it's like, okay, I have to focus on like a third of the screen for this
Right.
part of the scene and
It's
just
like
ignore
you
it.
just you want to have just a pause button with you just so you can be like, okay, I need to stop on this frame because what the heck, there's just too much to take in at times, you know? It's just like, whoa, so much color, so many people, so many things. And yeah, no, like, and you could argue that that works against the movie. I mean, I'm going to go see it multiple times anyway. So, but like, I cannot wait to get this movie on streaming or just like a home version that I can view just so I can go pausing and then like getting the playhead to the frame that I want it on, just so I can be like, okay, did they include that one? Oh my God, they included that, you know, just because it's there's just so much going on. There's just so much going on in this movie, and it's ridiculous, and it's awesome, and it's infuriating, but it works for the movie, you know?
Um, One thing, and I don't think this is a spoiler, so I'll say it, is I did not see any symbiotes anywhere, which I did think was kind of interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
I didn't
so
either. Although
and
to be
and
fair, the comics they did their whole like they did like a whole Venom verse event, and I'm just kind of like, look, I'm not. I I accept Venom and Carnage as Spider-Man Rogues Gallery villains. I get it, but I am not here for them.
Mhm.
Like I accept that the symbiote is part of Spider-Man lore. I'm not the kind of person that wants to see more like symbiote heavy events. I want to see
Right.
more Spider-Man heavy events. But yeah, it's worth noting that yeah, I didn't notice one either.
I
And I'm
I
betting
mentioned it.
Oh, go ahead.
I mentioned it to my son, and he said, "Well, like Venom's not really a variant of Spider-Man." And I said, "Yeah, but there are versions of Spider-Man that have symbiote suits."
Yes.
And then he said, "But if I were recruiting a team of Spider-Man from across the universe, I probably would not recruit the ones with the symbiote suits." So that probably kind of explains that to
Yeah,
some
yeah, that's true. That's a really good point too. But I mean, there's also a point in Peter's history when he's just wearing the black suit. It's not a symbiote.
extent.
It's just a black suit. You don't see that either, you know. So, um, yeah, I get the reasons why they didn't do it. I understand that
And
they, yeah,
to be clear, that's sort of what I was expecting. I was expecting just to see like a black suited Spider-Man somewhere, and I just didn't
right,
see any of them.
yeah,
Not
no.
necessarily like Carnage there or anything, but just yeah.
Oh man, Carnage Gwen or something. So, um, let's wind down this discussion with some overall impressions and recommendations for this movie. Now obviously this movie is doing really well. It's making a ton of money. Uh, Butts are getting into the seats to watch it. And it's going to do well. Um, I I have a lot to say just about the emotional impact this movie had on me. But I would definitely like to hear your perspective first, Andrew. Like, what did you think overall, just the movie as a whole? Would you recommend other people go see it? Just hit me with everything that you want to talk about that we haven't yet.
Yeah, well, I do feel since it's like a review of the movie, I guess I feel like I should say something negative other than like it was maybe so good visually it overwhelmed me. Um and I did feel like there's a couple of elements about the timeline that's established in the movie
Hmm.
that I haven't been able to quite get my head around
Okay.
how everything works on the time frame that they've sort of established. Um, and they didn't go deep into like timelines, but I'm like, has this like whole thing been happening over like 1 year? Like this is a lot of people, and like to get all organized in what you're doing, and like
Right.
um in the amount of time that I believe it indicates at a couple of points that maybe you've had to be doing this. Um, and so but also there could be time travel I again there's just like were a couple of things with the timeline I wasn't entirely sure
Okay.
on.
All right.
You're jumping between universes. It's not clear that all the universes are moving at the same speed. There's all sorts of ways you could kind of futz with it.
Right. Right.
I don't know if you mean if I know you mentioned I wrote string theory for dummies, so it could be a couple of time dimensions. You could do all kinds of weird stuff. There are definitely ways you could explain that. So it's not a huge critical thing. It's just like I was kind of trying to map some things out, and that was my only big like plot issue with it.
Okay.
Um, and but I mean I don't think it's critical. I don't even think if they don't resolve it or explain it in some way that it would pose a problem. Um, I just that's like the one thing about the movie afterwards that like I didn't feel quite worked for me.
Okay.
Um, Everything else, like I said, like you said, the emotional things they're doing with the movie and everything. I with where they left it off, I think there will be some very, very big payoffs. Um,
Some
I'm
of which we
not.
can't discuss here because man,
I
do
was
I
gonna
want to.
say, yeah, like I have actually a very big prediction about some way that the next movie will unfold
Okay.
based on. I can say this because actually I can say this part because I know one of the promos had a very moving speech from Miguel's mother, or not Miguel's mother, Miles's mother,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which is in the movie, and it's a very moving speech, and it's very like motivational and everything to Miles, and it kind of it essentially kind of gives him permission to like do what he needs to do without her knowing what she's giving him permission to do, of course, because she doesn't know he's Spider-Man. Um, I think that speech will have a very amazing resonance in the next movie and pay off big. And
Okay.
will probably not say more than that because I don't know how to without spoiling some stuff there.
That's fair. That's fair. And I will be interested. Sorry, I will be interested to see um just how much that's. I know. I think I know which speech you're talking about. Protecting the little boy inside of him, making sure
Mhm.
that he knows. Okay, yeah, no. I mean, I agree. I think that that moment was shown in the trailers for a reason. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
and
think
it,
I think I think, and I can say this again. I think that little boy inside of him, her little boy, is going to be in a great deal of danger in the next movie, and Miles will have to make some very tough decisions um,
yeah,
about doing right by that boy. And so,
yeah. No, I think I'm with you on that. And it's funny because my coworkers at the library that I work at, uh you know they can predict me pretty easily in terms of, hello, I see a Spider-Man thing, I'll give it to Tony, or if there's a movie like that, I'm gonna go see it. And I don't shut up about these things anyways. So it was funny because when I walked into work the next morning after seeing it, like one of my coworkers, I she might be here in the chat. Hail to the geeks. Asked me, how was it? you know, and it's just funny because everyone else, when I got there and they saw me and they heard her ask the question, just kind of looked at me, and I'm just gonna say what I said then. I was moved to tears. I was moved to tears by the end of the movie because um I have kind of had I guess a little bit more time to connect with the Miles Morales character because I went back and I read the comics. I've looked into the history of like what inspired his creation. And reading those stories, I mean, they are Spider-Man stories through and through. Like you'll read them and you'll just be like, this is great. I love it. Give me more. Um, and so when that character was brought to the film, and he had his moment, like the moment from the previous film where he jumps from the building and it inverts the camera and shows him falling up. He's rising. um it's just, you get to see those characters come into their own in a way that you don't get to in the comics, and it really kind of resonates with you. And this film took a lot of the emotional capital that I already had placed in Miles and his, in Gwen, in Peter B, and really did a lot with it. And you know, I don't want to go into spoilers, but we talk about how like this sets up a cliffhanger ending, and when you see what happens, it's kind of like, at least for me, I was combating some heartbreak there, but kind of like The Empire Strikes Back, though. Yes, it ends on a cliffhanger, but it also ends on a note of hope that makes you excited. And so, like, it's really hard for me to just put into words how much I loved this movie. And you know, to talk briefly just about the podcast for a second, yes, guys, there will eventually be an episode where I do a tier list of all of the Spider-Man movies. So you'll want to be there for that. I don't know when it's going to be, but it will be sometime over the summer. And um like right now I feel it's too early for me to even talk about where I would place this. All I know is that um it had it had a really big effect on me emotionally. Just the innovations, the casting, the animation, the music. I know we didn't talk much about the music, but the music in this movie was really good as well. Just all of it came together in a package that really kind of just it filled up my heart, and so um, I think it goes without saying that yes, I totally recommend you go see this movie. even if you're not a Spider-Man fan, if you just like good storytelling. I don't know that this movie could necessarily stand on its own in the same way that Into the Spider-Verse can stand on its own, but I do feel like it, like it still tells a good story about a kid who is trying to do the best he can with what he's got and trying to be successful despite all of the obstacles that are put in front of him. And I think on some level, we can all identify with that. That can resonate with all of us. And so, yeah, go see it. It's really good. Okay. And Andrew, do you have any final things you would like to say before I take us into the outro?
Well, I actually will say one other thing, because you and I are of a certain age that I don't know how like what your subscribers, but if there are people who Miles is their version of Spider-Man,
Oh yeah.
they I remember what year Miles came out.
2011 in the comics.
Was it 2011? Okay,
Yes.
God, it feels longer ago than that. I remember him coming out and there being a backlash against him.
Oh yeah, I remember it too.
And so to see, here we are over 10 years later, and to see a movie which is him at the center, that's so phenomenal, like storytelling wise and everything, is and that's I'm sure there's dark, horrible corners of the internet where people are complaining about it, but but like I said, there's just so many places where Peter is given prominence. And I mean, Peter Parker's my Spider-Man. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that's the Spider-Man I grew up with. So I mean, I get to some degree of that. But I mean, he's just such a good character.
Yes.
And for this storyline to give him like some prominence and everything, like it, and again, like I say, there's probably some dark corners, but I'm not seeing anyone or like making a fuss about it or anything. It just seems like everyone's just like enjoying that it's a good story, with a good character and everything. I think is a really good thing to see. Again, not that people didn't like him when he came out, like he clearly has been a favorite for many years, but it's nice to see some of that transitioning and into other forms of media, that we're getting some more variety in our Spider-Man.
Yeah, and that we're getting just such a good piece of work out of this, like I just I'm always going to be more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy, but like my heart still kind of broke for all of my friends who like DC when I saw I think it was Batman versus Superman, because I want DC Comics fans to have this kind of cohesive movie universe that is really successful, the same way Marvel fans have the MCU, and so like it really, I was just like, oh come on, and maybe we'll get that with James Gunn taking over the DC movie properties. We'll see. I certainly hope so, and I do have high hopes, but I'm really glad that in making the transition to film from comics, that Miles has just been treated as lovingly and as well as he has been, that we don't have to be like, oh, why did you do this to this character? And so that really, that really does my heart well. So, okay, well, I believe that brings us to the end of the show. If you enjoyed this episode of The Webline, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on my YouTube channel, simply named Spidey Librarian. The Webline is also available on audio services, so when you see us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts, or any other such service, please leave us a review and a rating. You can find me on my socials under the name Spidey Librarian on Twitter, Instagram, WordPress, and Twitch. Finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can count that. Finally, if you'd like to shoot me an email, you can contact me at spideylibrarian@gmail.com, where I'll be happy to hear your thoughts, rants, and ideas. Who knows? Your email might be featured in an upcoming episode. Andrew, where can you be found if our listeners want to know more about you?
Yeah, thanks. You can find me on Twitter at AZJAuthor, or on Facebook at AZJAuthor. Those are probably the best places to track me down. Again, I am an educator and a science writer, math and science education. By all means, track me down, message me or anything. I'm in the process of creating a science game, and finalizing that and hopefully getting that out some various means at some point in the future. So yeah, all sorts of stuff. And, look forward to seeing more episodes of this. I'll definitely click subscribe there so I can see it when you do more episodes. And it was a lot of fun. Thanks. I look forward to hearing the spoiler discussion to see to see what you guys come up with.
Well, I might be putting you a little bit on the spot here, actually, but this is the internet. We can do that. So, but one of the podcast episodes that I am working on for some time later this year is actually going to be about the science of Spider-Man, and I don't know, like there'll be some physics, but we're also going to be talking chemistry, mechanics, things like that. Would you possibly be interested in joining that discussion whenever I do have it, even though I don't know when it is yet?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah, excellent.
I have a few books on the science of comic books around here to reference.
Yes.
So.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Well, then
I can't answer about genetics, but I can.
That's fair. That is completely fair. So, all right. Well, thank you for being here, Andrew. Be sure to join us next Sunday on the web line, where I'll be doing a character deep dive into the classic, the one Spider-Man who started it all, Peter Parker. So thank you guys for listening. And until the next episode, I'll be wishing you a good day. Bye.